Hi everyone and welcome back. Okay, what I want to do in this tutorial is I want to create an array of numbers, and then what I want to do is I want to show you how you can write a function that will essentially return the highest number in an array of numbers. So I always, as you know, we've spoken about superheroes a lot in this course. I like to make up a fictional scenario. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend that we have a bunch of students. We'll call their grades, okay? And what I'm going to do is just put in some random numbers. So maybe your first student gets 60, then like 54, 77, 80. Someone gets like 98, and then 45 and 50, okay? So these are just an array of student grades. So I like that movie Inception. There's that scene where Leonardo DiCaprio's character comes in and says to Michael Caine, I need to find your best student to help me, create dreams in that movie, right? So the highest score we can see here is 98. So we want to write a piece of code that will return that to us. So we know what we need to do. We'll do a function declaration again in this tutorial, but we'll use the function keyword, give our function a name. Inside of parentheses, we're going to define a parameter. We'll just call it array. We'll have our opening and closing curly brace. And then what we need to do is we need to find a way to check to see what the highest number in the array is. So we know that if we're going to iterate over an array of values, we're going to have some sort of loop. So we'll use a for loop. And inside of that loop, as we cycle through each element in this array, we need to make a decision on what is the highest number or the highest grade in that array. Okay, so that's what we have to look forward to in this tutorial. So I'm going to create a function, and I'm going to call it, you could call it highest grade, but really this is a function that will find the highest number. I don't know what happened there, highest number. So we'll call our function find max number. We have our parentheses and we have our opening and closing curly brace. So we know we're going to pass in an array. We'll just call it array. So this is all about finding the highest number in this array. So the first thing I want to do is, we know if we want to find the highest number, we have to have some sort of variable where we store what we think is the highest number. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called max number. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually assign this the value of the first element of the array. So we're going to basically assign the first element of the array, so array at index 0, into this max number variable, okay? And because you never know, the highest number in an array could be the first element of the array at index 0. So what we'll do is we'll assign array at index 0 to be the maximum number, and then we'll use a loop to cycle or iterate through the array of numbers. And if we find a number that has a higher value than array at index 0, what we will do is we will just update the value of max number, okay? So what we can do is we can have our for loop. We're going to have our for loop, and then we're going to run some code inside the for loop. Now, typically we've seen when we make loops, we start our counter variable at 0, right? We typically say let I be equal to 0, okay? But the problem with that is, if we run the loop starting our counter variable at 0, the first time we run the loop, we're actually comparing the first element in the array to itself. So what I mean by that is this: if we run our loop, right, while I is less than the array.length, and we've seen that syntax many times before. We have I++, we're going to increment our counter variable after each loop iteration. If we were to run that code and we do a check to see if, because we're doing a check, right? Anytime you're doing a comparison, you know you need to use an if statement. So if array at whatever index we're on is greater than the max number that we have above there, right? What we want to do is we want to update the value of max number to whatever element of the array we're currently on, right? I'll explain that in more detail in a moment. But the problem with the code we've written so far, and obviously once all this happens, you want to return the max number. Now the problem with the code as it stands is as follows. What happens the first time we run the loop? Well, think about it. We pass in, we're going to do it, right? We're going to pass in the grades. So let's actually do that. So let's just call our function find max number, and pass in the grades. Okay? Now, here's the problem with the code we've written so far. If we take this array of numbers called grades and we pass it into our function find max number, here what we're doing is we're saying let the maximum number, our variable, be equal to the array at index 0. Okay? So that means that max number has a value of 60. And remember, that's because grades at index 0 is 60, right? Grades at index 0 is 60. Okay? So the first time we run the loop, we're saying let I be equal to 0. We're going to run the loop while I is less than the array.length. So we enter the loop. What we're doing is actually this. We're saying we're doing a comparison for array at index 0. So we're saying, okay, if array at index 0, 60 is greater than max number, currently 60, update the value. But why would we do that? Why would we start counting at index 0? So the first time the loop runs, we're actually comparing 60 to itself. So there's no need to do that. So what we'll do is we'll actually start I, our counter variable, at 1. So basically, the first time the loop runs, instead of comparing 60 to itself, what we're doing is we're actually comparing 54 to 60, i.e. 54 being array at index I. So we can see here that we can see here that array at index I, i.e. array at index 1, 54, we're doing our check to see if that's greater than 60, because right now the max number is array at index 0. That's not true, okay? So we run the loop again. Then what we do is we're saying, okay, 77, array at index 2. Is array at index 2, 77, greater than our current max number of 60? Yes, it is. So what we do is we actually update the value of max number with whatever element of the array we're currently iterating over. So when I has a value of 2, we actually update the max number to be 77. Then we increment I and run the loop again. So now I is a value of 3, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, okay? Then what we're do is we say, okay, is array at index 3, i.e. 80, greater than the max number of 77? Yes, it is. That evaluates to true. So we enter the if statement and we take array at index 3, i.e. 80, and store it in max number. So now we've updated the value again. And then what we do is we enter the loop again, and now we're checking to see if 98 is greater than 80. So is array at index, looks like 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. Is array at index 4 greater than our current max number variable? Yes, it is. 98 is greater than 80, so we update the value, okay? And then we check again. Is 45 greater than 98? No, it's not. So we do not enter the code block here. We don't update the value of max number. And then we check to see if the last element in the array, 50, is 50 greater than 98? No, it's not, okay? So then what happens is we iterate, we've done all our iterations, we've cycled through all the elements of the array, eventually our loop will stop running, and then what we do is we just return max number, okay? So now, if we call our function find max number, let's store that in a results variable and log it out to the console. If I say let results, or let's call it highest grade, let highest grade be equal to the grades passed in to find max number. When we log out highest grade, we should get the highest number in the array, which is 98. So if I save and refresh, we get 98. And if we were to add another element to the array, maybe we get a really bright student from somewhere, and they actually got 99. If I save and refresh, our function will find that 99 is higher than our current highest number, so now we have 99. Okay, awesome. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. That is how you can write a piece of code that finds the highest number in an array of numbers. So what you do is we did a function declaration, but you can use the function keyword, have the function name, so I called it find max number. You have your parameter, because this function is expecting an array, so I just called the parameter array. You have to keep track, so you want to basically keep track or store of the highest number. So we declare a variable called max number, and we just assign that the value of the very first element of the array, so array at index 0. Then we have our for loop checking, doing our various comparisons, okay? So there's no need to start the loop at array at index 0, because that would mean the first time the loop runs, it compares the first element of the array to itself. So that's why we did let I be equal to 1. We run our loop while I is less than the array length, and then we do a check. We're checking to see if the element we're currently cycling over is greater than the maximum number. If it is, we update the value of max number, and if it isn't, we do not enter the if statement. Okay? Then once the for loop has run and cycled through all the elements in the array, we have basically found whatever the maximum number was and stored it in max number. We return max number. Then when we call the function find max number and we pass in grades, we store it in highest variable, and then we just logged that out to the console. Okay, awesome. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. I'll see you in the next one, where we'll find how we will write code to find the smallest number in an array. So I'll see you in the next tutorial.